Hi, I'm Ruth Molman from the Farmington Hills Historic District Commission, and I'm going to be looking into what we had as far as safety in Farmington Hills. And the first law enforcement officer was David Smith, who was elected constable in 1825. He had come west with Arthur Power, and he and John Power were the ones that knocked down the first trees in Farmington. After that, it was pretty much everybody was on their own. They were volunteers mostly, and everybody had their own dog and their own rifle, and you could go out the back door and go hunting if you wanted to. David Smith stayed on in Farmington and lived to past 80. His property was on 10 Mile and Middle Belt. The other man that was hired by Arthur Power went back to New York because he didn't like it on the frontier. That was David Rush. He took his money and went back, and David Smith invested his money. After that, through a long period of the Farmington Township, they had private security, which they hired, and volunteers or private security, until they got to Earl Teeples, who was a private security person also, but he was so popular and he worked so well with young people that he was elected supervisor. He was the last supervisor of Farmington Township, and after he became supervisor, he couldn't work as a policeman anymore, so they hired another man that came in and was also a private security person that came in as our police department. And eventually we got a professional police department. I think John Nichols, who came after we became a city of Farmington Hills in 1973, he came in as a professional law enforcement person, and then he was elected sheriff. And I have with me Bill Dwyer, who came in after John Nichols. Now, how did you get here?
Well, Ruth, first of all, thank you for having me on your show. Actually, what happened when John Nichols was elected sheriff in 1984, the city of Farmington Hills advertised for a new police chief. And I applied. I was in Detroit. I had been in Detroit for a little over 23 years. I was second in command in Detroit at the time. I worked directly under the chief of police, chief's division. But I applied along with the roughly 75 other applicants. And they got it down, the board got it down to 10 semifinalists and then down to 3 finalists. And I fortunately was selected. And I served as the police chief in Farmington Hills for over 23 years, which is kind of a record for a police chief, because the average tenure normally for a police chief in a city is anywhere from 3 to 5 years. So it was a very rewarding time in Farmington Hills, and now I'm your county commissioner here. I went to Warren for 2.5 years, and we did a lot of good things in Warren, but I started in Detroit when I was 21 years old. In fact, John Nichols gave me my first promotion to sergeant in 1971.
Now, how did you were telling me how you were working as was it a carpenter?
Right. My father was a builder, and after I graduated from high school, I got married at 19. Shortly after I graduated, I married my high school sweetheart, and I worked with my father during the summer and the fall months and the spring. We were working 10 to 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. But in the winter, there was no work. So I picked up, I think it was the Detroit Times at the time, which, I don't know, many people remember the Times, but I picked it up and they were looking for police officers in Detroit. And I applied. I was 21 years old, and I applied, and I got the job, and it was just the greatest thing that ever happened. I worked in Detroit again for over 23 years, and I was very fortunate to rise through the ranks of getting promoted to sergeant, as I said, then lieutenant, inspector, commander. I was in charge of the narcotic division in Detroit for almost 8 years. I was 35 years old, and I had 180 people under my command at that time.
Wow.
And we were doing 10 to 12 narcotic raids every day. We went to Mexico in 1975, and actually it was called the Mexican Connection. We smashed that. We went from Detroit to McAllen, Texas, to Reynosa, Mexico, to Monterrey, to Culiacan, and Durango, and actually got the lab. So it was really a big thing back in the 70s.
The way that they brought the cocaine in, I think, is very interesting. What did they do with the cocaine?
Well, the cocaine now, that was a separate investigation from the Mexican connection. The Mexican connection was actually the heroin coming into the United States. The cocaine was coming from Bogota, Colombia. And there was a chemistry major at Michigan State by the name of Neil Eisen that developed this formula where you could liquefy the cocaine. And what they were doing is in Bogota, and I sent my undercover officer to Bogota, Colombia with a DEA person, Drug Enforcement Agency personnel. And they actually seen how it was being processed in a hotel room. They would liquefy the cocaine, and then they would put the cocaine in JB Scotch bottles, reseal it, and that's how they would smuggle it back into the United States. Once it got back in the United States, they would bring it back into its solid form and only lose about 1% of its purity. So that was really a very interesting case, along with the Mexican connection and then the cocaine investigation in Bogota, Colombia.
I went to all that trouble to educate him at Michigan State.
Yes, exactly, exactly. But you know, there's such a large amount of profit to be made in narcotics, and that's why you have the drug cartels in Mexico right now that are killing hundreds of people, you know, a year in Mexico. I just seen a featured story recently where, you know, we were in Mexico in 1975, and there's a lot of corruption in Mexico then. But now, I mean, the cartels are paying off the politicians. They're paying off people that are supposed to be good law enforcement people. But you know, as long as you have a demand for drugs, you're going to have suppliers. And what's happening in Mexico is you just have a war. If one of the drug cartel leaders it goes to prison or is murdered, then there's a big uprising as far as people trying to take control of that particular cartel's organization and area.
You were in Detroit. You were bodyguard for Mayor Kavanaugh?
Mayor Kavanaugh, yes. I was in my early 20s, and I was selected to be a bodyguard for Mayor Kavanaugh, who actually, he was only in his early 30s at the time. He had just gone through a divorce. He had 8 children. Actually, we're at the Manugian Mansion. I served there until 1970, but Mayor Kavanaugh was a very unique person, very bright. They looked at him to be, you know, touted for the White House, but things happened. The riot happened in 1968, kind of hurt him there. But he was a man that just was a very, very intelligent man. But I was pretty fortunate because during my career, I've met, you know, 6 presidents. I met both President Bush's, President Obama, President Reagan. I've been very fortunate, and actually I was selected to be security for Pope John when he came in. I was with Pope John during his visit here. I also met Frank Sinatra and had dinner with Frank Sinatra.
He was some character, I understand.
1980, the GOP was in Detroit, and that's when Reagan was running for president and Bush was the vice president. And you know, that's when Sinatra came in with his wife Barbara and a lot of other stars. So, you know, during my career, I mean, you know, I've worked narcotics, I worked vice, I worked organized crime, went through the FBI Academy. But, you know, to meet as many presidents and have your picture taken with them and provide security is something that very few people ever have the opportunity of doing. Then on the other hand, when you have the Pope come in and you're part of that security team, and then you get into the celebrity part of it, you know, with Frank Sinatra. I met Frank Sinatra, as I said. I went to dinner with him at the London Chop House, if you remember the London Chop House in Detroit. And I met Glenn Campbell when he was in, and Tanya Tucker. So it was a great career. You know, I guess the highlight of my whole career was working narcotics. You know, I took over narcotics when I was 35 years old, and you know, it was just something that, you know, a very dangerous job, but we got, you know, we continue to fight the war on drugs today, but it's very difficult.
Now, when you came into Farmington Hills, what were your programs that you started here?
Yeah, I came in again in 1985, and I found that you know, John Nichols had done an excellent job with the department, and I kind of really took over from where John Nichols left it. We continue to make it a more professional department. We emphasized education to the officers and training to the officers, and most of the officers that are in the Farmington Hills Police Department that are members of the department have their bachelor's degrees. A number of them have master's degrees. They've been through, several have been through the FBI Academy, the Staff and Command School at Northwestern University. But we kind of emphasized training and education, accountability. That was very important, to be professional. We wanted a professional police department. My philosophy has always been treat people like you want to be treated. And one of the things we started was a cadet program. We brought young people in at 17 years old that had just completed high school. And you bring them in and they work the front desk. They take reports, they process prisoners, but it's a career ladder position, it's a full-time position. But we looked those people over, and when there was an opening in the sworn ranks as far as police officers, then they would go before an oral board, we'd promote them, they would go to the police academy. But I think what we tried to do too was bring a lot of community policing programs to Farmington Hills. I mean, I had over 60 community policing programs in Farmington Hills. I mean, some of them was like the Kids Club, Detectives Kids Club, the Bicycle Helmet Giveaway Program. I could go on and on with the different programs. And the programs were to, really reach out to the community and let the community know that, we're not an army of people just here arresting people and writing tickets. We're here to serve you. And we're human beings, we're compassionate people, we have families, and we want to make sure that you're protected like you should be protected. And it worked out very well because we were named the safest city in the United States several times.
You didn't have, your volunteers then weren't actual police officers?
Well, when I came in, we did have volunteers. We had, one of the programs we started was the handicap parking volunteers. You remember that program?
Oh, that's still around,
It's still around. In fact, my wife was one of the first volunteers.
Oh, really?
And, there was so much, I guess, violations as far as handicap parking, so we really made a difference. But that was a volunteer force. They would come in, and they would work anywhere from, 4 to 8 hours a day, a couple days a week, enforce the handicap parking laws, which worked out very well. Then we did have our reserve officers. We had reserve officers that, if we had a need as far as maybe some sort of a special event, maybe a parade or something, or sometimes the reserve officers would double up with the regular officers, so we had that. And we also started a volunteer program involving clerical people, people that were retired, maybe they were a retired nurse or a retired professional that would come into the police department and work alongside our regular civilian personnel, maybe typing reports or doing filing, and that worked out very, very well.
Community of a lot of volunteers.
Yes.
Volunteers are very important here in Farmington.
Absolutely.
Hills, Farmington and Farmington Hills both.
And they continue using volunteers. I think you hit it right on. I mean, the volunteers are there to help you, and of course with these difficult economic times, you really need the volunteers more and more today than ever before.
Now, you had a very interesting educational program going after you became a police officer. I love that picture of you in the police academy. That is such a...
Well, I was very fortunate. I went to the FBI National Academy. I graduated from the FBI National Academy in 1974, and that was in Quantico, Virginia, right at the FBI site. And we stayed there, we lived there, and learned a lot as far as criminal law and forensic science and different things that we took. But I graduated from the academy. I was a sergeant at the time in Detroit, and it just so happened I was on the promotional list to lieutenant. So while I was at the academy, I actually flew home one Friday. Was promoted to lieutenant by not John Nichols, but another police commissioner. Then I flew back and graduated, so that was a big thing. But education is so important. I was very fortunate that I went to the academy. I received my master's degree from Wayne State in police administration. So that's why I've always emphasized in my over 48 and a half years before I retired, 48 and a half years in law enforcement, that you need that education. And today, if you go back to the early 40s, you didn't see police officers educated like they are today. You didn't see them trained like they are today. You didn't see the technology that you see today. I mean, the mobile data computers, the DNA testing, all of that is really great technology. You know, when I started back in Detroit in 1962, you know, I walked the beat. You didn't even have prep radios, portable radios at that time.
Wow.
You had these call boxes. You'd walk from one end of the beat to the next. But today, you know, obviously, you know, officers are well trained. You know, another area is in firearms. You know, it used to be that when I come out of the academy, you were given a 6-shot 38 revolver. Today, everybody has a semi-automatic weapons with at least 15 rounds, and that is to keep up with the criminal element. You know, at one point in law enforcement, we kind of got behind as far as in our tools, as far as when it came to firearms. But now we've caught up. But if you remember back years ago in California, we had the big shootout, and you know, actually the LAPD was out-armed by the bad guys who had the automatic weapons. But today we've caught up and we're doing very well.
I can. Now, how many different things are you doing as a commissioner in Oakland County? That's fascinating.
I'm pretty busy. There's 5 standing committees. I'm on the personnel committee, and of course, in the county there's over 4,000 county employees. I'm on the finance committee, and the county budget is about $763 million. I'm on public services. I'm the co-chair of public services, and that oversees the sheriff's department, the prosecutor's office, and the court. I'm also the chairman of the ethics committee, and I'm also on the audit committee. And I'm pretty busy with that, but I'm finding it a real challenge. It's very rewarding. I'm meeting with the seniors every other month now at the Caustic Center, updating them on programs that the county has to offer. Our next program, we're bringing in somebody from the health department to talk to the seniors about what programs the health department in the county has to offer. I started a coffee hour in May at the Big Bagel in downtown Farmington to talk to people. It's from like 9 to 10 o'clock on Saturday morning, and I just want to respond to any questions, concerns that our residents have at the county level, and also to inform them what the county has to offer. One thing I found out, Ruth, was that when I campaigned and I walked the communities, not many people knew exactly what a county commissioner did.
Oh.
But you know, the county commissioners are the legislative branch of the county. You know, Brooks Patterson's the executive. But anything that has to go through when it deals with personnel or funding, so on and so forth, has to go through the county commissioners and be approved.
Well, we have so many different layers of government, it seems like.
Exactly,
in the area.
right. But I must say that, you know, this county is in excellent shape. We have a 3-year rolling budget, which means that our budget is all set now through 2013. And you know, we balance the budget. We're not hiring any new people, just like the cities are. You know, we're hiring, if there's a priority need to hire someone other than the sheriff's department, they're part-timers that come in. That saves the county a lot of money because you don't have to pay the benefits as far as health care and that. So that's working out very well. And again, the tax rate in this county is one of the lowest in the state, and there's no intention whatsoever of raising your county taxes.
Now, as police chief here, there were fantastic changes during the time you were chief. What are some of the things that impressed you most? Well,
it's pretty amazing. You know, I came in 1985. The first city council meeting I attended, they actually approved the funding and the construction of the new police headquarters adjacent to City Hall. So that was pretty big because we had outgrown the old place. I mean, it was just there was no room to do anything. So that was one big thing. And then the other was actually the size of the department did increase significantly while I was the police chief because it was based on the population. I mean, I remember when I first came here in '85. I mean, you know, the community has changed so much. I mean, it's growing. You know, our population is, you know, I think our population is the largest in Oakland County. But back when I first came in, I think the population was around 59,000. Now it's over 80,000. you know, the way the roads have been constructed, the new construction itself is amazing to me. But we always kept the city safe. You know, the patrol officers were out there. They were, you know, in a preventative mode. They continue to do that today. The city of Farmington Hills and Farmington are very, very safe cities today, as they were back when I came here back in '85. I mean, we do have our crime. There was some, you know, crimes that I can recall that, you know, it just bring tears to your eyes. I remember the husband that came home on a red eye from Las Vegas, murdered his pregnant wife and the 3 children that he suffocated, and then he turned the weapon on himself. I mean, you know, there's some stories out there that I could tell you that, you know, even though it's a great community, you know, there's still some, you know, some stories out there as far as homicides that occurred and child abuses that occurred, like in any other city.
Well, how did the paving of the roads affect the police department? Did it?
Well, it did, yeah. You know, the traffic congestion and that we had back in the early '80s, it certainly improved. You know, our traffic control. And again, it you know, it brings more people into the community. But the roads have greatly improved, and you can attest to that, going back, you know, in the '60s and '70s here. But I think, you know, if you look at what the city's done, the new city hall now, I mean, that's just great. It was overdue. It was overdue. I mean, there was a little criticism there, but I think that city hall was needed, and there was no bonding of money. You know, the city did a great job as far as, you know, the green efforts in the city hall also.
Of course, you patrol the freeways too.
Yeah, we patrol the freeways along with the state police, and you know, we have our traffic officers down there. We do have some fatalities as we do on our main roads here. You know, our main roads such as, you know, 12 Mile Road. But overall, I think we're in excellent shape. The community has grown to, and I'm sure you're proud of it, just like I am after 26 years here. It has grown into just a great community. You don't hear very much as far as any negative talk about the community. I mean, we're the state of the art. I mean, everybody works hard. You've got a, you know, great mayor and city council that works real hard. You've got yourself that volunteers your time. And I think it's a very cohesive community when you bring everybody together like that.
Yes, it did a wonderful job. Well, thank you so much for coming and telling us about all these wonderful things that you did and are continuing to do. We can be very proud of you.
Thank you, Ruth. I appreciate the opportunity.